Today we're going to discuss these dammed up rivers. And so you see these particular shapes. And you'll see these shapes throughout the interior low plateau. You'll see them in other areas too, but really throughout Indiana you see these as well. In this case we're looking at East Tennessee. And the shape I'm referring to is this kind of this big kind of meander, and then all of a sudden, boom, it comes to a small little stream. And so those are dams. And so it's essentially a river that's been dammed up, and then over time the water is backed up behind that dam, and so we can always see the direction that the water's going, because the bigger part is always going to be upstream. And so upstream, dam, and then we go downstream, and here it gets much smaller. So we have these series of dams that we can see here along the Tennessee River. And the reason for that goes back to the Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA. And this is part of the New Deal. I'm not going to bore you to tears with the United States history, but President Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, what he did was at the time he recognized the problem. So some people disagreed with too much government intervention, but the problem he recognized was, first off, this is an area that was poor. This is an area that was, off the grid, that wasn't connected in terms of electricity, while the rest of the country was being electrified, not this particular area of Appalachia. Third, this is an area prone to flooding. With these steep slopes combined with a lot of rain from orographic precipitation, we get a lot of flooding. And so he came up with this very, 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 very far out, expensive project in which he was going to dam up all these different areas of the interior low plateau, but the Tennessee River in particular, with the idea that was going to, first off, control the flooding, second off, provide jobs, because you got to build the dams, you got to then maintain the dams, and third off, provide electricity from hydroelectric power, which we already discussed beforehand in Quebec. And so here we have essentially the origins of this policy, which has no doubt left a lasting effect in this particular area of the country. And so we look at much of the interior low plateau. Not only do they have cheaper utilities because of the Tennessee Valley Authority, over time it's actually attracted manufacturers because they got cheaper utilities. And so if I have a big, huge manufacturing facility that requires, let's say, a lot of cheap electricity, or requires a lot of water, let's say, well, I can now locate here. And so one particular example of that, Alcoa. Really, we don't know much about Alcoa, ALCOA, but it's a company that specializes in aluminum. And trust me, aluminum is in a lot of things. But they're involved in all kinds of high-tech stuff. You also have Oak Ridge, which is where Oak Ridge National Labs, which is where a lot of science and technology. Why they locate there? Because of the access to cheap hydroelectric power. So that helps to explain kind of why we see cheaper utilities. Also explains why we have a good amount of jobs, because this provides still to this day thousands and thousands of jobs. But also what this has done is this has added another feather to the tourism cap in an area that has increasingly been seeing incoming tourists. And so while people going to watch country music in Nashville, or go to the Kentucky Derby and get hammered in Louisville, they're also going to these recreational areas that have been created from these dammed up rivers. And so essentially these dammed up rivers, what they have done is now essentially created lakes. And it very much what people do in the Midwest, in this area of the country that's not really surrounded by the Great Lakes, or really surrounded by coastline, is if you want to go see water, if you want to go boating, as they say in Indiana, if you want to go boating, you got to go to one of these dammed up rivers, because there aren't a lot of natural lakes or rivers in which you can go swim in and recreate and do all those things we like to do. And so here's the Tennessee River, another area which has been dammed to create the land between the lakes. You got Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley. I've been to a bachelor party there. Spent a week there. Don't really recall too much from that. We've got Dale Hollow. Dale Hollow, a lot of Hoosiers go down Dale Hollow, go down boating, go down to Dale Hollow. It's located right there. Another example of a dammed up river. So we see throughout in Kentucky, these dammed up rivers, and this is tourism dollars. This is people coming in, oftentimes from outside Kentucky, coming in and spending the week or spending more than just a week there. So we have down, for those of you from southern Indiana, Lake Patoka, another example of a dammed up river. For a lot of those people who go down to Bloomington, Lake Monroe or Monroe Lake, whatever it's called, a dammed up river. And so these have been areas throughout much of southern Indiana, the interior low plateau, in which this is where people go for amenities, but also this is in terms of economics, another way to add a little bit more to the diversity in an area that traditionally has had lower income.